Welcome, everyone, to episode 8 of the MBE Enterprise Podcast, where we talk about money, business, and entrepreneurship with some of the brightest minds I know. Today, I am pleased to be joined by entrepreneur, co-founder, CEO, Jalen Ponder. Jalen, how are we doing today, man?
Doing fantastic. Glad to be here.
Well, like I said, I'm super excited to have you. Jalen, founder, CEO of Evendtor. It was a business that you pitched at a business competition that I was at as well.
Yep.
But actually, I don't want to start right there, Jalen, right away. What I want to start with, we were talking about before this, Jim Rohn. He has a lot of excellent quotes, excellent videos, speeches. You mentioned that you're a very big fan of his, and I am as well. And I wanted to hear a little more about kind of just your thoughts on him and how he's impacted you in the past.
Yeah. So it's hard to start with how much he's impacted my life. When I was about 13, I first had my glimpse into why I had wanted to be an entrepreneur. When I was originally born in West Side Detroit, and my aunts, my mom, and my dad, and all my uncles, they had a very difficult time at certain points taking care of me. So I'd bounce house to house to house to house. And when I was 13, I was just looking around the situation. And my aunt, she was taking care of me and 5 other people. And she was getting pretty sick doing it. And she would take pills to wake up in the morning. She would take pills to relieve the pain during the day because she got really bad hands. And then she would take pills when she went to sleep at night. Wake up the next morning and do the same thing again every day for years. And I vividly remember sitting down in the middle of my room that I share with my brother. I was just laying down in the middle of the floor. And I remember it almost like it was yesterday. Me thinking there's people that own houses in Germany and they live in America. They go to the top of these high rise in Chicago. They go and take a vacation in Belize, and we're struggling to just get up in the morning, just make ends meet, just put food on the table. And I made a commitment to myself that I was never gonna die like that, and I was never gonna let any of my family members go without. My sole purpose in life from that point forward was if one of my aunts needs a house, I got the house covered. Don't think about it. If my dad needs, if my dad wants to move to Mexico or Germany or France or whatever, I mean, tell me the exchange rate and I'll pay it. That's the type of life that I would love to provide for my family. And I started thinking if it's possible. I wasn't even thinking, is it probable at this point? I was just thinking, if it's possible to make $1 million, $1 billion, or be like Bill Gates in my head, I was saying, if it's possible and you can work to get it, I don't mind putting in a couple extra hours. I from that point forward, it was just how do I get from point A to point B, and I genuinely did not have any. I just didn't think of any sort of obstacle. I don't know how to phrase that. So what the first thing that I did was I looked up online how to make money. And of course, boom, got scammed out of $50, right? Uh I actually look it was a program called My Online Business, and it was My Online Business Enterprise. And the CEO of the company actually got sued 3 years later because he was scamming people. And I actually bought into that. But it was a program that was telling you, hey, you could do some affiliate marketing here, and they'll give you like these little books that were obviously pirated. And they would just have this call with you. They set up a 10-minute call each day with these people. And I paid $50 when I was 13. I had some Christmas money left over or something, right? And so I got into all these calls and made my voice deeper than what it actually was at the time so that they thought I was old enough to be on it. Cause I was telling them I was 18, right? And so long story short, they were telling, they had this activity that they do. And they were like, yeah, each morning you need to wake up and look in the mirror and say, I have a millionaire mind. Say it 100 times. And I was like, okay, fine. I'll go in there and say, I have a millionaire mind. And so I did all of that, never made money off the program. The company got shut down. But I continued saying, I have a millionaire mind for that whole summer. And I was just thinking, like, wait, if any mind can do it, why can't mine? Like, if anybody anywhere can think like a millionaire, why can't I think like a millionaire? And I started to believe it. And I was thinking, well, if I'm a millionaire, then I got to go out there and make money. And so I went to the dollar store and I started buying these dumb gifts, like these gift bags and stuff from the dollar store, and I bought them for $1. And then I started selling them online for like $3, $4. It was just a little things to make some money. And then I figured out that you can order. I got further progressed down the chain and I started ordering stuff from dollarstore.com because a lot of people don't know that you can order stuff off a dollar off the Dollar Tree. That's where it is that everything is $1. But I would go to the dollartree.com and I would order maybe 20 of the bunny TV sticks. They're like these dollar TV sticks. You put them in, you can get a couple channels. So I'd go to the dollar store website once I made enough sales and I'll buy all of these for like 98 cents and then sell them for $15 online, you know? And so it was just a quick way to make money. I didn't make a killing off of it, but I started to realize, and it was so critical for me at that point in my life, was I'm not limited physically. I'm not limited mentally. I can make money if I can think about how to make money. And I started getting into that mindset. And when I came across Jim Rohn, that's when my mind completely changed. Because as I said, I'm originally from West Side Detroit. That's the lowest poverty rate in all of Detroit. That's the highest crime rate in America. And a lot of people aren't thinking about, hey, I can really be something. But when I listened to Jim Rohn and he was saying anybody can be anything that they want, I started thinking, is that true? And it's hard for me to even put into words how revolutionary of a concept that was in my mind at that time. Because I didn't think I was going to turn out to be anything. You look around, I mean, there's a lot of bad things going on. I wasn't doing great in school. I genuinely didn't think I was going to become that much. I thought I was just going to go and sell dollar store products for the rest of my life, you know? Uh, so I started listening to these tapes and that was the first, that was the first time that some, because even though these were all YouTube recordings, they were all like online. That was the first time that somebody talk about these big aspirations. They talk about these big dreams and they said, you can do it. Not anybody else, not the guy next door, not if you grow up in the right neighborhood, if you go to this right school, if you get the right connections. He was like, no, it doesn't matter. You can do it. I never thought like that. I never heard that before, but I started believing that I could do it. Along with my aunt, she was a big motivator for me going into business. I just decided I'm going to change. I don't care how long it takes me. I'm going to change. And so the first thing that I did was I tried to figure out how I can make money. I walked up the street to a food truck owner, and the food truck was called Chili Sauce and Dogs in Detroit. And the guy running the truck, his name was Benjamin Welch. I went up to Ben and I said, hey, man, I see that you're taking $15, $20 here every other hour from people that are walking by, and I would really love to work for your truck. I know a lot about Facebook marketing because I went online and I just heard this. And so I was like, I know a lot about Facebook marketing. Can I do Facebook marketing for your truck? And he was like, yeah. He was like, yeah, maybe. And he was like, how old are you? And I was like, I'm 16. And at the time I was 13, but I kept trying to make my voice deeper. And it was like, all right, fine, I'll give you a shot. Come to my office and give me a presentation. I'll give you $20 to run my Facebook page per week. And if it works out, then cool, I'll keep paying you. But if it doesn't, I'm going to have to cut you off because business is business. And I said, all right, give me a week. I went online, then actually looked up what Facebook marketing was, right? And so I started Googling Facebook marketing, looked up the tools, downloaded the free applications. And at the time, I was working off a public computer, right? And so I put together this presentation, borrowed my uncle's computer, put a presentation on there, and went down to like the west side of Detroit, did this presentation. It was like, wow, it looks like you've been studying marketing for a long time. And I was like, in my head, I was like, yeah, But I gave him the presentation. He gave me a week. And he was like, yeah, I'll pay you for the first week. Go ahead and see what you can do on the marketing. In the first month, I grew his audience by over 100% just by working every day on doing this. The next 3 months, I grew his audience by 100% again. And within the first year of us working together, I got him booked at the biggest event space in Detroit. It's called Hart Plaza. It's right off the river downtown. And that's where people, when they visit Detroit, they get like Tupac, Biggie, Little Uzi Vert, Beyonce. When they go down to Detroit, they perform at Hart Plaza downtown, right next to the arena. I got him booked down there. He sold out everything on his truck. He didn't even have the cups left to put drinks in. And at that point, I realized I had something. I was basically working on his Facebook page. People will message the page and they'll say, hey, can you come down here? And then I'll say, yes, how much? Or they'll call the truck and they'll say, hey, we got this school event out here. I'll be like, how much? And I'll figure out these prices, get him a guaranteed amount walking into the door, and then he'll figure out how to sell his food at what price in order to maximize profit. So I started doing that when I was 13. And so I just started calling around Detroit and figuring out more places where he could go. But when I got him there, I realized I had something. And I realized that I could book food trucks at different events, whether it be weddings, graduation parties, and get them high value contracts and just remove any uncertainty about an event. The thing that food trucks hate the most is they'll go work for a full day at a parking lot and make $20. Or they'll go to somebody's birthday party and then nobody wants to buy food. With this business, I'm getting them a quote up front. You're going to make $800 at this event. Now go. Then they're confident. Now my event size is the biggest contract that I've had this for my food trucks now is in the $4,000 range for a food truck to show up at an event. And negotiating these contracts, I make the food truck better off and then the company better off because they know exactly how much that they're paying and where it's going to, and they have a third party intermediary. But it was a enjoyably hard process getting there. So in order to get to that point, I wake up at 4:28 every day. And the reason why I do that is because Ben, the food truck owner that I met, he was in real estate. Detroit's an hour ahead of us. So he would wake up at 5:30 in the morning. The first thing he would do would call me, and he was like, all right, so what are you putting up on the page today? Or get this to me by 4 in the morning, get this to me by 5:30. And he would say something like, all right, we need to get this up for this day at this time. And so in order to get it to him by 5:30 that time, I had to submit it by 4:30 that time. And in order to submit it to him, I'd have to be up a little bit before 4:30 to get it there. So I used to wake up at 4 on the dot, but I realized that I need to give myself more sleep time. But that was a personal decision. But I would wake up at 4:30, and at this time I would wake up at 4 o'clock. I had a closet in my house. I'll walk into the closet, listen to a Jim Rohn tape for about 30 minutes, then take a cold shower after I submitted it. And then I'll take this book, and I have a book like almost sitting, it's back there. I'd have to go and grab it. But basically I would take a notepad. Actually, let me grab it. I just for reference.
This is what I knew when I was going to have you on, Jalen. I was like, this guy can talk. For when I met him the first time, he had to give an elevator pitch at a business competition. And I was like, this guy can speak with like no other that I've met personally. And I was like, I might not have to say a single word on this podcast episode. He is just going to roll and it's going to be awesome. So keep doing what you're doing, man.
It's because I get excited about this stuff, you know? It's because it was so revolutionary for me to have these thoughts. But each day that I would wake up, I grabbed a notebook and basically I put it on here. I put book notes, and Jim Rohn was like, he said in one of his sermons, study for an hour a day, and you'll take so much from that hour. Okay, well, let me rephrase it because here's how it's actually quoted. He said, don't make it through the day, get from the day. Because a lot of people are just so worried about from going in at 9 a.m., trying to get to that 5 p.m. That's all that they're trying to do. They're not trying to get better. They're not trying to do anything. A lot of us should wake up in the morning at 8 and try and get to the other 8. You know, it's just a race to the end. And then hopefully at 8 p.m. we go to Margaritaville on Friday. You know, it's not it's you're not getting from the day. So basically what I would do is you can see all these quotes here. Each day I would wake up and I read a book and then I'll label it. This one is from 2020. It's Art of Happiness in a Troubled World. And then meditation sessions the following day. And then The Millionaire Next Door, books by T. Harv Eker. And each day in the morning, after I woke up, took a cold shower and listened to his tapes, I would read something for an hour. It doesn't matter what. And that's what put me ahead. Nothing else that I think I can't contribute anything else of my habits, at least. My parents did a phenomenal job of putting opportunity in my hands. My aunts did a phenomenal job of taking care of me. I can't discredit that at all. If there was anything that I did personally that put me ahead, it was taking that hour a day and waking up at 4 in the morning. That's purely what I believe has put me in this position. But yeah, once I first started working for that food truck, waking up early, learning and developing skills, I learned how to sell. And there was a couple of things that I studied, and they were pretty atypical. And then I'll go to my next one because I'm rambling on here. But when I woke up at 4:30, or when I woke up at 4, took those 30 minutes, took a cold shower, I would study right around like 5 in the morning. 5 to 6, I would study the most random stuff. Not random, but for an example, Jim Rohn, he was saying that a lot of people go through life wanting to go into business and they don't even learn how to do a handshake. It's just a want for them. And I kid you not, if I'm lying, I'm dying. I Googled, how do you do a handshake? And for an hour, multiple weeks, right? I would take this hand and shake it like that. And I kid you not, when I first got into high school, I started going to these business competitions. They were like, how does this guy have such a good handshake? And I was like, so I had to explain to him. I wake up at 5 in the morning and practice my handshake in the mirror. You know, like it sounded so crazy. And it was stuff like that. I would practice my handshakes in the mirror. I would practice walking in my room because I had like this place where I cleared out all my stuff on the floor and just walking with confidence because he was saying like a lot of people don't have confidence in themselves. Why would other people have confidence in you? And so I set up a mirror and walked back and forth for an hour some days, just working on my posture. I would shake my hand. And as I perfected these things and got a lot better at it, my it was so rewarding to see the payoffs. A lot of people at that time they were saying, "Wow, you're the most polished 15-year-old I've seen, or you're the most polished 16-year-old I've known." And by the time I was 16, I was getting deals with people that were in business because they thought I was older just by my mannerisms and how I could talk to people. And it was so easy to focus on some of these things. I remember, I think the weirdest one that I did was probably eye contact, just making eye contact with myself in the mirror, just talking. And you'll notice that a telltale sign that I've noticed, because we all think of things subconsciously, and we'll say like, "Oh, I can notice." Like, if somebody seems upset, you don't have to think about every detail that makes them upset. You'll just say they look upset, or like that guy looks mean, or that guy looks nice, or something of that nature. And there's telltales for people that look young. One of them is avoiding eye contact. They haven't been taught how to be self-affirmative. They haven't been taught how to have that confidence. And so one thing that I did was every day I'll look myself in the eyes and have a conversation with myself and not break that eye contact. And all of these skills taught me something. And as I started going out into booking food trucks and actually going into business, all of these soft skills, it doesn't matter how good at calculus I was or how good or bad I was at statistics. I started making sales when I was 13, 14, just off of waking up consistently, getting myself done that I needed to get done, whether it was getting an email back to this person, getting a marketing piece to this guy. I would wake up, get it done, work on these skills, and people trusted me for it. And I can't express how valuable that 1 hour a day was. It's just it was a great investment of my time. So yeah, that was probably a lot more than what you were looking for here, but I really would want to emphasize 30 minutes listening to something, an hour studying something, regardless of how crazy the task may be.
There's a lot to unpack there, Jalen, but
Yeah.
I love all of that stuff. Just the organic aspect of how you came about doing what you're doing. A lot of the routines that you were doing, you talked about a cold shower. You talked about reading, learning right away in the morning, or just ways to motivate, even the discipline to do that same routine every day. So many of those things are coveted by so many people in today's world. And there's people who make a living just talking about this and talking about that
Yeah.
and talking a big game about how you got to do this, you got to do that. And you just from that organic young age, finding Jim Rohn, just started doing it. I have to ask you, Jalen, here first. Like I said, there's a ton to unpack there, but how did you stay disciplined at such a young age and consistently do what you were doing? Because like you said, you were 13 or even 16 years old. Like there's people out in the world today who struggle with this at 25, 35, 45, 60. You know what I mean? Like, how did you stay disciplined throughout that entire period? And kind of what, I know discipline is the word as opposed to motivated, but also what kept you motivated or what kept you disciplined?
So it's the two words: love and hate, and knowing how to use them wisely. So I every day that I woke up, I wrote. So I just took a picture of this on of my wall. So when I was a kid, every goal of mine that I had, I put I wrote it down on this piece of paper. So I would take pieces of paper like this out this journal. I'll write it sideways, tear it off, and then write in a big purple marker so I couldn't miss it. I would rip out the page and then pin it up on the wall of what I wanted to do. And one of those things is provide for my parents. I love my parents. They've given me everything. I love my aunt. She gave me everything. I love my uncle. He gave me everything. And my business mentors, they invested. One of my mentors, honestly, probably invested over 150 hours in me, just within the span of maybe 2 years. Probably, I'm being generous here, just so that I'm not. Oh, it could very well approach on the 300-hour mark, just in 2 years, just of how willing he was to travel. And I love these people. If I was in my head, if I don't wake up on time and I don't get these skills, I'm letting down everybody that has invested this much into me. I want to see them be happy. I love my brother. I want to see him be happy. I love my mom. I want to see her be happy. If my dad ever gets sick, I don't want to have to worry about the bills. If my aunt ever needs anything, I don't want her to have to think about, is it okay to call Jim? And that got me so pumped up, I couldn't sleep in. And there was two things that I absolutely hated. I hated the thought of not being able to do that. And specifically, imagine this. Even from an outside perspective, I think that you could get where I'm going at. My aunt, for years, went on medication to go to work to put food in my mouth. I have the opportunity to do well, and then I don't. 5 years from now, if I look her in the eyes, what am I going to say? I can't imagine. I can't. It hasn't. It doesn't even cross my mind. That's how much I tried to trauma block that experience. uh, and the other thing that I really disliked was the hypothetical guy behind me, and I I think that I had a healthy. I mean, I guess every person that I think I had a healthy narcissism at that age, right? I was thinking nobody in my school is even going to come close to touching what it is I'm doing. I don't care who it is. I don't care how late I have to stay up. I don't care how early I have to wake up. I'm going to kick their ass. That was just my mindset every day, and that got me pumped up, and it was a competition. But I realized looking back on it, I was competing with myself because I never knew who was behind me because I was only looking forward. But I was like, all right, if they're right on my heels, I have to keep getting better. And so a combination of those two things is kind of what pushed me forward. And one of the most memorable experiences that I had was my dad. He was in the military, so he always woke up early, did all of his things. I remember waking up at 4:30 a.m. on the weekend and going to clean up the bathroom or whatever we had to do because we had chores on the weekend. I was up doing it at 4:30 in the morning. And it was like, why are you up so early doing this? And he was like, and I remember looking him in the eyes and I was like, Dad, I got to do my taxes. And like I'm like 16 at the time, but it, it just, for me, I think I had the gift of being deeply connected to other people where I don't look at it as discipline. I thought it was fun. I still think that waking up at 4 in the morning is fun. Like I get to craft the life I want to craft. I get to study what I want to study. I get to get done what I want to get done. Is that a bad thing in my eyes? No. I like do I don't even view cold showers as bad anymore. There's so many. I view it as an opportunity to make my life what I want to make it. And I would maybe I have so ingrained this lie to myself that I enjoy waking up early that now I actually believe it. But I've done it for so long that it's enjoyable to me. I can't imagine doing anything besides it.
Well, Jalen, I think that's such a powerful mindset to have. The idea of just waking up and even just waking up and loving every day, waking up and realizing that I'm living one life and I get to craft the life that I want to have, or that the best life I can build, I can do
Yeah.
it. And it all comes down to that original motivation, that original what Jim Rohn instilled in you, the idea that, if anyone can do it, why can't I? Right?
Yeah.
Like I can do it. And I think that is just, it hits so deep because it's just so obvious that that's played such a huge role. And there's just a lot to unpack right there. I'm thinking about like
Yeah.
10 different things right now. But
Yeah.
just the idea of, you mentioned that you thought it was even a little bit narcissistic of you. I don't even think it's that. I think an ego is healthy, right? You have to have that to a certain extent. And for you, it was just that confidence, the confidence of like, no, I'm not going to let anyone else beat me. Like you totally went to the point in your head of, I can't even think about anyone else beating me because I am just going to do what it takes. And failure is just not an option. And I think there's something to be said for the situations that people get in life where failure just literally isn't an option. And I think a lot of people don't realize, honestly, like myself included, I think a lot of people don't realize like how motivated, how disciplined you can really be when failure actually isn't an option. You know what I mean? When you actually get to that point in your head where it's just literally not an option. And like getting up at 4 a.m. every day at 13, 14, 15, 16 years old. I mean, people will call that insane. They probably will in the comments. They'll be like, this
Mhm.
dude's crazy. the amount of discipline that takes is unbelievable. And now the fact that you've built on that and stayed consistent, and consistency is huge, done it every single day to the point now where you say it's not even hard. People can't even fathom that. Like that it's not difficult, but because it's so unique and so far out there from what most people would think of, that it's just incredible. You mentioned the 8 to 8. Most people are just living to get to 8 o'clock so they can, go to margaritas on Friday nights or do whatever, watch a TV show in the evening. And I mean, there's nothing intrinsically wrong with that, I guess, but just the idea of you get one life to build what you want to build, and what are you going to do with it? I think a lot of people get tied down with just the day to day instead of kind of thinking about what can I do today, or what do I get to do today? Most people think, what do I have to do today, right? And I think that's a kind of another way of saying how you reframed it in your head, right? You didn't look at things of like, oh, I have to do this, I have to do that. No, I get to do this. I don't have to provide for my parents when they're older. I get to do that, and I want to do that. And that's what's one of the things that I think is so huge on it. And kind of to move on a little bit, that was all amazing. One of the things you talked about was mentorship and how that's played a huge role in your life. I want you to dive a little more deep into that for us, maybe some specific situations that have been extremely important for you regarding mentorship.
So the computer I'm calling you off of was gifted to me by my mentor. I had and still have a phenomenal mentor named Edward Caceres. He's from Venezuela. And it's always hilarious. Him and I, he met me when I was 14. So just at the peak of this. And I remember it because I went to a business conference when I was 14, and I lied about my age again. And he talked to me and he was like, man, you're clearly not 18. And it was, I didn't know how to tie a tie, right? And I went to the business conference, him and I started talking. And he saw how ambitious I was. And I told him that I was interested in starting business. He worked at the Small Business Development Center. And he said, well, if you want to start a business, I'll take you seriously. If you want to meet at your school and we can talk about how, because they had programs going for some of the upperclassmen. I wasn't an upperclassman yet. I just got into high school. He was like, if you want, I'll stick around for an extra hour and I'll help you structure your business. And so consistently every week I showed up, wrote a business plan. I wrote a whole business plan by hand. So I got a bunch of scrap sheets of paper, wrote out the business plan, wrote out the marketing plan, drew a logo by hand, stapled it together, and then showed it to him. And I think in his head, he was kind of like, holy shit, this guy is serious. Because in my head, to your point, I had no comprehension of losing at this state in my mind. It never crossed my mind. It just, I can't, it's hard for me to place into words what my mindset was, but I just, for a week, what I did was I had to keep a calendar for myself just so that I knew exactly what I would be doing. But let me see if I still got one next to me. I keep all this stuff pretty handy. Oh, I used it as a computer prop. Yeah. So one sec. Let me pull out something. Basically, what I did was I kept this calendar, and I still keep the same calendar system from when I was in high school. But I would set aside an hour each day. And this would, instead of using my study time to study, what I did was I used that study time to write a business plan. And so usually I'll break up my months right here in those blue lines. Every other blue line, I'll write what I'm studying for that day. And so that was just this month. But it's the same process I kept when I was 14. But I spent an hour each day writing up my business plans, working on notes so that I could show Edward. And each week we would meet and I'll go over the notes that I read up for him. And then I would do my sales throughout the week because I was booking food trucks. So I wrote down, I want to call 10 food trucks every day. And so I had to call 10 food trucks during my lunch period, during lunch, because in high school, I skipped my lunch periods to go to the library and call food trucks. And I just basically wrote down all that information, put it down and showed it to Edward on the weekends. him and I started getting, because he saw that I was not joking about going this far into business. A lot of high schoolers were joking; they weren't serious about it. And so, the girlfriend that I had at the time, this is fast forward a year. She was a year older than me. She already had her car, and so Edward and I were still meeting, and then we decided, okay, we need to have a longer conversation. So each day we would drive. I'll get my girlfriend to drive me to McDonald's because it was out the way of the school. And so I would drive to McDonald's, meet with Edward for an hour, and then Edward would drop me off back at home. And so we would run through these business plans. Edward helped me. He gave me this first computer so that I could work at home. He taught me how to do some marketing. He showed me what to look up in order to get more information about these businesses. And I can't even express into words how much he helped me. And I don't know why he did it. It's just a bizarre. You meet some really great people in this world that don't need anything in exchange, and it's rare. Just because people are taught you always need something, you need to exchange something. But I don't know why. I mean, he still mentors me to this day. It is just, I think, to me, I just don't know how great people are formed in this world like that. Maybe you get so used to the selfishness, but he's really been a key part into everything that I've done up to this point. And
One thing I have to ask you real quick, Jalen. Were
yeah,
you writing a new business plan each time? You're saying, but you were building on your same one. That's what you were doing, correct?
yes,
Got you.
building on
Got
the
you.
same business plan. Because in order for him to help me with some of the questions I had, he needed to see a business plan. He wanted me to get used into the habit of writing down stuff. And so he was like, yeah, just elaborate, elaborate, elaborate. How are you going to find these target customers? And so, yeah, he helped me a lot, and still to this day does. And it was just, so he would always, so with this accent, it's the J's are pronounced like an H. So he'd always be like, Colin, you need to, you need to look up this information. And he'll be like, he would tell me the things I need to look up, and then I'll look them up by the next week. And so, yeah, he's just been incredibly helpful in virtually anything that you can imagine. If I needed a ride to go see a client, boom, done. If I wanted to get a drone footage of an event that I'm doing, he had drones. If I needed information on how to do a new marketing, he would help me out with it. It was just, I don't know how to explain the blessing that got put in my life there.
You mentioned how you started with food trucks.
Mhm.
What made you stay in that? Right, you were 13 years old when you got into it. Obviously, there's millions of different businesses you could have built. You're
Right.
obviously extremely ambitious. What was kind of the thing with the food truck, the marketing aspect of that had you hooked, right? That really made you want to continue, because with the ambition and the discipline that you have, there's no doubt you could go into anything and have success with it. Like I truly, I'm
Right.
sure you believe that, and I think I believe that too. And anyone listening, but
Yeah.
just kind of what made that stick for you, I guess.
So it got to a point where I realized I know too much about taco trucks, and nobody else is going to pay me to do it. So, that was my thought process here was, what am I going to do with this obscene amount of information that I know about how to build, operate, market, and sell a food truck? And I had a bit of a short-sighted mindset on it at that time. And you're right. I believed at that time I could do anything else. And so I went into the small side tangent business. But basically, what I did for a while was I went online and designed websites for people. And I sold websites for like $300 a piece when I was in high school. That was one thing that I did. I didn't like it. I sold chocolate and I sold soap. I didn't really like that. All while running my food truck business, mind you, all these were doing. I collected aluminum and sold it up the street at this aluminum factory. It was so much work for such little money. That was one that I did. I mowed lawns, and all throughout high school, I tried all these different things. And so I think I just had an entrepreneurial mindset from the jump when in terms of that, because I did all that stuff in high school. But all throughout high school, I still had this food truck booking business. I was like, why do I still have this food truck booking business? I couldn't get my mind around it. I graduate, and well, I was in my graduating year, and I get a chance to go down to a national pitch competition for our high school. And I never thought that I'd make it to a national pitch competition, but I obviously put in the work time to go down there, and went down there, got a little bit of investment money. I got $2,500 to turn around and like make a business with. And I used that $2,500 to buy my first car so I could get to and from places. And so it's like an old beater, you know. But I started to notice when I got this investment money and going to all these events, I was driving down. I was like, this is the only business that I really enjoy. And I was thinking, why is that? It didn't hit me then. I recall this conversation. I went into college for one semester and then immediately dropped out because I hated it. I don't know how else to describe it. It was during COVID year. I absolutely hated it because it was online Zoom classes. They weren't teaching me what I needed to teach. I was giving up time that I could use making money, so I dropped out. And I started a digital marketing company with a group of 5 other people. We scaled up pretty fast. We started working with doctors, lawyers, and then we went down to Memphis to shoot a NCAA basketball women's tournament. Then we worked with an NBA player, and so we had all these contracts coming in. Long story short, I really did not like the people I was working with. The work culture just wasn't there. And
How did you get connected with them originally? How did you guys build it?
so I had met one of the guys at it was a co-working space in Beloit, Wisconsin. So I was in there because I wanted to work on my business. There was no classes during the summer, and I needed a co-working space to go to. So I went down there and I just worked in the co-working space. And I was a kid, so they let me in there for free. I met one of the other guys. He was a young guy like me, and he knew a lot about doing digital websites. I knew a lot about selling, and because I just view selling as an extension of talking to people. If I believe in what I'm talking about, then obviously I can sell it. Obviously I can talk to somebody about it if I believe in what I'm talking to. Like if I talk to you about a good gym that I go to, and I'm like, hey man, you should really check out this gym because it's the best that I've seen. Like I can talk to you a little bit about it. But he thought I was good at selling. I thought he was good at designing websites. And so he told me that he met 3 other people that know how to do some digital marketing. One of them knew how to do videos. One of them knew how to do the back end of the websites, and another person knew how to do copywriting. We bring all 5 of us together, and then I was like, all right, fine. If we're gonna get to the money, let's get to the money. Let's see what we can do. And the first couple of months, we just started working together, and then was not the culture of the group was not fantastic. So if you can see how you probably see how I am with in terms of wake up, do that, do that, do that.
Get it
And
done.
yeah, if you're serious with me, I'm going to be serious with you. And if you're not serious with me, I'm not going to be serious with you. If we have a meeting at 8:30 and you show up at 8:35 every day, the hell am I there for? You know, like I don't. Obviously, you don't. Not only is it that you don't value my time, it's that you don't value your time. We have only a certain amount of time in the workday, and if we can't show up consistently, then maybe that's the right work environment for you, but it's not the right work environment for me. And some of us would show up on time. Some of us would show up late. We have conversations about them showing up late. They'll keep showing up late. We have conversations about, hey, we need to have an agenda for this meeting. It got to a point where I said, I'm not going to sit down in a meeting unless we have an agenda. I don't have meetings now without an agenda. That's not what I do. If I say, hey, Matt, can we have an hour-long meeting? I want to get some stuff done for you. I now open a document, and on everything I love. I write down documents now, meeting notes ahead of time, because I'll have not only an agenda, I'll have a script, like a miniature script, because I value your time. I want to take you serious, and I want to seriously gain something from this conversation. If I'm serious, you're taking me serious, and both of us are serious, we should seriously get a return. Not to oversaturate the word serious in this conversation, but we would have hour-long conversations with no agenda, not getting. We would sit down for 3 hours at a meeting, not get to any progressive action items. So that kind of caused a rift, because I didn't think that, hey, we're not moving forward. I can do these sales as much as I want. You can design these websites as much as I want. But if we're essentially here and we're never going to get to here because our operations are here, then I would be better off leaving. And so we had a conversation with one of our co-founders. Well, it was primarily me. Me and one of my co-founders. We had a talk over the phone, and I was just talking to him. I was like, "Hey, man, I am not going to show up to a meeting unless we have an agenda. That's just me." And we had meetings with clients. I would always come up with the meetings for these clients. I helped do like a sale for a guy that ran an MBA factory, and it was like a training factory. And so we after that call, I was like, "Hey, dude, we need to get our day structured." And he was like really hot and short tempered, and so he said something that was a personal attack to me, and I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna hang up the phone. We can talk about this tomorrow, and we're either gonna reach an agreement. I'm gonna take my money out and leave." I told him we can meet here at this Panera Bread. I'll bring all the other people in the company with me, so that if whatever decision is going to be made, then they can see it in front of me, because we're either going to get this right, or I'm going to get out. And so I sat down, everybody at the table. I just like brought all the food to the table, and I was like, "Hey, man, let's just cut to the chase. I know that you had said something that was super unprofessional to me yesterday. Can we move past that, put it to the side, and figure out how to restructure this company?" He said, "I never said that." And so I just shaked everybody's hand at the table, got my money out, and left. Never talked to him again. It was just it was just a waste of my damn time, because I can't. And so I realized that's not how you run a company. And now I go so far out of my way to say thank you to every employee that I hire. I go so far out of my way to check on my employees. I go so far out of my way to it's not even conceivable in the book of Jalen Ponder to insult one of my employees or one of my business partners. And I will go, for an example, for like if my business partners needed, for an example, one of them needed $400 because they were going to go see their mom somewhere, and I was like, "Hey," he was like, "I'll pay you back $400." Da, 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 da. And I was like, "Bro, you've helped me so much in this company over the past year. Take the $400 and keep it. I don't need it." And now we'll jokingly throw shots at each other, just mess around, because one of my business partners, it is hilarious to see the way that this man enters a car, right? Like, you just got to see it, because most people like get into a car from the side. He gets into a car head on. It's a weird. So we make jokes about stuff like that, but I just learned how not to work with people from that organization. I learned how to value people, because you can have as much valuable talent as you need, but if you don't know how to structure the talent, you don't know how to appreciate the people around you, they're going to leave 100% of the time. Because here's you're going to have two cases. You're going to have people that aren't valuable, they don't know their worth, and they're going to stay because they don't know their worth. Or you're going to have people that are valuable, they know their worth, and they're like, the hell am I sticking around for when I can make hundreds of times the money? If you refine your skills, 100 of times the money, working at a place I enjoy, I'm out of here. And so it was a learning experience, that whole thing was.
Well, I think one of the things you touch on too that's absolutely huge is knowing your value and also respecting yourself. Like, you had too much respect, also confidence. You had too much respect for yourself to continue working in that business, even though some people would be like, oh, well, we are making some money, so I'll keep doing it. Or they could be like, I'm not super confident in myself. I feel like these guys are pulling more weight than me. So I'll just stay in here and just kind of ride their coattails, and I won't let it bother me. No, you had respect for yourself, and you also knew your value. You're like, yeah, cool. We're doing this right now. We're making some money. That's nice. But if you're not going to respect me, I'll go elsewhere and make just as much, if not more money, because I'm confident that I can do that. And that mindset is absolutely huge to have too. Going back to Evendtor, to where we kind of started that point with, two things there. One, a lot of people who want to be entrepreneurs, they don't know where to start. They don't know what business they want to run. There's a million different ideas. We live in an information age, right? There's an over information age, some would say. You're flooded with so much info that you don't even know what to do with it. You can't discern between this or that. And it's hard to make decisions a lot of times for people. And I think one of the things you mentioned within that is you knew so much about taco trucks, or you knew so much about food trucks, that you're like, what am I going to do with this information? It's a waste if I don't. And you kind of laughed as if it was a joke, because it kind of is funny, right? Like, that's kind of how you got into it. But there also is a pretty deep, important meaning within that, in that if people are struggling they want to be entrepreneurs, they have the mindset, they want to grind on something, for example, but they don't know where to start with something you have a knowledge base in. Like, literally just look at yourself and be like, what do I know a lot about? What can I provide value? Because I might like this, but if I don't know anything about it, then I'm going to have to spend the first X amount of time learning about it before I can really actually provide value to people. And that's one thing that really, really struck me, honestly, just recently, is I was like, kind of in that boat of like, okay, I'm at a point here, I need to start something and I want to start it. What do I, like to do, but also like, what do I know how to do? And for me, it was like personal finance, investing. So that was one of the things that I'm working on right now, is kind of that style of business going forward. And for the longest time for me, like I said, I was just like, I want to do something. I like the idea of sales. I want to get better at sales, but I don't have anything to sell. Like, I'm not an inventor of a tangible product, right? I don't have anything to sell in that sense. I was like, what can I do? What do I was honestly at a loss. And then I was like, well, what do I know the most about? Well, personal finance. I'm pretty good at budgeting, pretty like disciplined when it comes to money and investing. And I was like, I'm a finance major. Like, I've spent since I was like 15 years old and essentially investing and reading about investing. So I was like, well, why don't I do something with that? And just starting there is so huge, because so many people don't know where to start. And then another thing is the fact you never gave it up. Consistency. That's another thing. I brought this up so many times on this podcast, but the idea of, people start something, they have a business idea, and they're overly optimistic about it. And they're like, yes, I'm going to do this. It's going to be awesome. Then they get into the first month, they run into a couple of difficulties, and then they're overly pessimistic instead of optimistic. And they're like, oh, this will never work. Some other thing, shiny object syndrome. This one looks greater. I'm going to try this business idea because it's going to be easy. Then they get a month in with that, rinse and repeat, and they're getting nowhere with anything. So the consistency, and at such a young age, like, that's what's crazy to me. The fact that you're able to stay consistent with that and you're still doing it. Like, how many people start their first business? And for some people, it's fine. Like, they start their first business, they do it, they get out of it, they kind of learn some lessons and they move into something else. Like, for you, you're still doing that. And you actually left a different business because you had the respect for yourself, you had the knowledge of your value, and you just stuck with it. And that's just so absolutely pivotal, because people are always trying to look for a get rich quick scheme. And the fact that you started this when you were like 13 and you're still working on it, and it's obviously going well for you, is just like, that's what's crazy to me. Because how old are you, Jalen?
21.
So yeah, 8-9 years essentially. It's impressive, and consistency is absolutely key, and it just always will be. And one of the things now, getting into we've talked about a lot of kind of deep understandings of another thing, you got to write a book. You said the book of Jalen Ponder. You definitely need to write a book. You definitely need to write a book. because that would be an interesting read for sure.
I
A
did want
couple,
to.
yeah.
I did want to add because I don't think I really answered your question about why I stay in this business. I know I may have ran into a long tangent here, but to concisely answer your question, I was kind of joking about the information about the taco trucks. I realized that at a basic level, the thing that I enjoyed was making other people happy. And I I noticed that, for an example, the only reason why I went into business was because I wanted to make my aunt's life easier. I wanted to make my mom's life easier, my dad's life easier. I want to make other people happy. I remember there's a quote by Jim Rohn. He said, "Keep a book on everybody that you love, and like make sure that you're checking up on them. Make sure that you're keeping tabs on them." You know, saying like make a running ledger of how it is that you're dealing with everybody. So I took things so literally. That's the reason why I became so successful in entrepreneurship. I think it's because I learned it young. I learned everything without having a pessimistic view on it. I just did everything as instructed because once you get old, you get skeptical. But I just literally, when he said keep a running ledger, I went to the store, I went to the store and bought a ledger, and I just labeled one page mom, I labeled one page dad, I labeled one page brother. And so I would keep a running ledger. I was like, hey, what would make my mom happy today? What would make my dad happy today? What would make my brother happy today? And I did this every day for a year. And so if I was going to my concession stand at the school, I knew my brother liked these gummy worms. So I'd buy the gummy worms and then put them outside his door. I knew that my mom, she didn't want to come home and cook, so I'd cook something. My dad didn't want to cook, so I'd buy a pizza. And I knew my dad liked watching some of the sci-fi shows, and so I put on a sci-fi show. And so I really had this strong affinity for making other people happy. I absolutely love event planning because I get to make other people happy. And that's why it stuck with me. Because now it's to a point where I bought a drive-in movie theater. I do events for Frito-Lay. I do events for myself. I do events for weddings. And when I think back over it, people write me letters about saying like, thank you, our wedding was awesome. This was the best day of our lives. I made couples at my drive-in movie theater. People were like, yeah, I met my boyfriend down at the Drive 815. Or I booked a food truck down at my corporation or at a corporation. They'll be like, yeah, nobody ever said thank you until you got this food truck down here. And my desire from a very young age had been, I want to make other people happier. I want to make other people struggle less. And when I think about it, and if I'm being really honest to myself, life is extremely difficult and people don't often take advantage of the opportunities that they have to celebrate and to find happiness. Through doing events, I find a medium to allow people to take the edge off. Yeah, I remember this came after I quit this other company, right? I was thinking, all right, now that I left this company, time to go back full swing into my business. I'm gonna make way more money than I did at that company. And spoiler alert, I did make a lot more money. But I remember getting a letter in the mail from this old guy that went to our drive-in movie theater, and I knew he was old because he wrote me a letter. And he wrote me a letter, and he was like, yeah. He's like, dear Jason, and I was like, okay, because I was like, maybe he was like, yeah, I think because he was like, I saw you on the news. He was like Jason. I think that he just got a lot of. For some reason, old people think my name is Jason after a while, but yeah, he was like, dear Jason, I got to go to this drive-in movie theater and see my kids, my grandkids, for the first time in 2 years because it was COVID. It was one year they were out of town, and then it was COVID the next year. And this was the first time that he got to see his grandkids through the car window. And I I never go like more than 48 hours without thinking of of that or other people that wrote me letters like that. And I just realized how happy I was making people. And when I go like when I go up to school here, some people will be like, "Oh, dude, you're the guy that runs the drive-in," or somebody will tell me and they'll say, my kids have a great experience at your drive-in." And if you look at our Facebook page, our drive-in has a 5-star. Nobody has ranked our drive-in less than 5 stars on Facebook, and it's because when the same compassion I have for other people, like my family, when people come to my drive-in, we'll have like the screen showing, we'll have the food going, and one thing I pay my employees to walk out there and hand glow sticks to all the kids and say thank you for coming out. And if there's ever like a delay in our movies, I give them all bowling tickets that I pay for. Like I'll give them all like one game on us for making it run a little bit behind. I'll talk to all my customers and I'll tell them, they'll ask me like, what do I do? And I say, I just work at a movie theater. I don't even tell them I own the business. I was like, I work at a movie theater. I just wanted to like know more about how to make your day better. And so a bunch of people started leaving reviews and they're like, yeah, this one worker there, Jalen, he's a really cool guy. And then eventually people started putting it together that I own the place. And so it was a good experience, but I just realized that events is how I make people happy. And if I'm getting paid to do what I love, that's the best thing I can do.
That's all you can do. That's all you can do. There's a quote by Alex Hormozy that I really love, and it's, if you get into business to make money, you won't be very happy. If you get into business to make people happy, you'll make a lot of money. It goes some way along that lines of, if you just get into it to get the money, you might make some money, but it's going to be tough for you to really, really be happy, right? But you get into it to make other people happy and bring other people value, whether it's a product or a service, then you will be fulfilled, and also you'll make the most money. You'll make more than you would have because you really believe it. I think that's something you touched on with sales too, right? What's the easiest way to sell more of your product? Make a better product and have it be a product that you believe in. Exactly. You believe in that product, the conviction that you're going to have, even just in sales, for example, which isn't obviously like you're doing more than that, but just in the sales aspect, the conviction that you would have with that is going to be so much more than you would have otherwise if you're selling something that's junk and you don't really actually. That's my biggest thing. Did you ever get into drop shipping? Just a quick yes or no.
No. Yes and no. I got into it bad at it.
That's one thing with drop shipping, is like you can flip stuff and make money in that way. And now it's obviously a very saturated market as opposed to like 5 years ago. But you're selling stuff that you don't really have a connection to. Like you don't necessarily know. The whole idea with drop shipping is that you never actually touch the product, right? So you don't actually necessarily know the quality of it. Like that's an example of something where, yeah, you can basically flip it to make money, be the middleman. But I mean, if you make a ton of money, don't get me wrong, like all the power to you. Like that's one way to do it, drop shipping. But if it's just to make little bits and pieces of money here and there, and it's not really anything it's not worth the work if you're not really getting anything out of it in that way. And that's just one example I think of. Jalen, if you had to give, I'm going to limit you to 2. I would say 3, but I know you'll give me more than enough information with 2. If you had to give advice to a young entrepreneur, 2 pieces, the 2 most key aspects of starting a business and starting out, what would you say those 2 most key aspects are?
I think I could be very short, believe it or not, with this whole other interview. I think my track history does not support this claim. 99% of the problems that you face in business are going to be your personal problems that you haven't resolved. That's advice number 1. Get that figured out. If your sales aren't consistent, you're probably not being consistent. If you don't have a good conversion rate over the phone, it's probably because you're not good at talking. If your website's not doing great, it's probably because you don't know how to build a website. And if there's so many if you have 5 business partners leave, it's probably not the business partners that are the problem. It's probably you. And the sooner that you realize that things just don't happen, things happen just. There's a justification for everything that happens. You're going to be way ahead of other people. Because I remember I was talking to, there's this business conference, and it was like, I was talking to this woman. She was like, yeah, I'm like, it was like probably a year and a half ago. She was like, yeah, I had 7 husbands. I just keep finding the wrong ones. And I was like, huh, imagine that. I maybe it was like 1 or 2, but 7. That's an extreme example, but a lot of people are like, yeah, people aren't buying my product. I talked to 100 people, nobody wants to buy my product. You probably don't have a great product. If you can figure out what those problems are and solve them, you are going to be worlds ahead of any other people or person in your competition.
Customer feedback.
Yeah, yeah. And I would say the next thing is, if you're not going to be disciplined, you might as well forget about it. There's so many people that want quick money. And here's the best way that my mentor explained this to me. If you put $10 into the stock market right now, when I was 15, he was like, when you put $10 into the stock market right now, by the time that you get to 65, a little bit older than me, you have $800. He said it's easy to get rich slow. Easy. If I just worked at McDonald's and put aside $100 a week, $150 a week, easy to make $200,000 by the time I die. 300,000, make $500,000, make $1 million. If I even just step up a little bit to manage that money over time, it's going to be $1 million if you're disciplined with it. Things are easy over time and discipline. He said, just like you have compound interest, every action that you take has compound interest. If I wake up, for an example, if I needed to learn how to code a website, right? If I woke up for an hour each day for the past year and studied how to code a website, I'll probably know a little bit about how to code a website. Now, if I'm trying to rush and I was like, I have a week to learn how to code a website, that's going to be very hard. It's easy to have a year of me spreading out that. It's very easy for me to study for 30 minutes every day for 2 years. It's almost a walk in the park for 10 minutes a day to learn how to code a website. You have all these small increments. Everything has compound effects. But while I may be able to try and crank out something in a week, my website's going to be garbage. If I learn for 3 years how to code a website, I'm going to be phenomenal. Now, let's take that same line of thinking and apply it to learning how to do sales. If I had to bet on me or the next guy in high school who had a better sales presentation after I woke up for an hour each day and practice a handshake, practice how to talk, practice how to look in the mirror, I'm going to beat him 10 days out of 10. There's never going to be a day that he gets one up on me because I worked so hard previous to that. Even if he started in his senior year, I have 3 years of waking up early, focusing on it. There's not a chance in the world. Now, my final example of this is going to be, what if you woke up for an hour each day and focus on how to start a business? If your problem is being consistent, study consistency. If your problem is, I don't know, I don't feel great in the morning, study how to feel great in the morning. There's so many basic problems that I studied. I didn't feel like I had high energy levels. Guess what I studied? How do I have high energy levels? And over time, it becomes easier. Like the Bible says, like, with many hands, the load becomes light. With many days, the load becomes light. With many hours, the load becomes light. And I'm not a theologian, so that may be the wrong quote here, but I think that's how it goes.
Gets the point across, yeah.
Yeah, I just think if you're not going to be disciplined, you're not going to be consistent, you're not going to have a business.
I think I think that's wise words for sure.
Mm.
30 seconds or less. What's the number one tip you could give regarding sales or marketing besides, really believing in the product? But just because we already kind of touched on that might be number one.
I
But
really believe in it. All right. I don't want to give you a bad response here.
no, that's appreciate it. It just shows you're thinking hard. It's like whenever they show interviews of like Elon Musk, right? I love those interviews because they'll ask him a question and every single time he pauses 5-10 seconds. And it honestly just shows engagement. Like we live in a world where we need quick satisfaction. We need everything to be immediate. We have short attention spans, but just honestly pausing to think, it just shows like engagement and that you're really trying to formulate the best answer you can. So no, I appreciate it.
The best advice I could give okay. 98% of the sales I have acquired, I can attribute to my people skills. If I were to give anybody advice on how to be good at sales, I would recommend that they go up and talk to as many people as they can. If you're in the bus, talk to somebody. If you're walking down the hall, talk to somebody. And many people that, okay, 30 seconds or less, you said. All right. Talk to as many people as you can. And I don't know how to phrase this in less than 30 seconds. Ask questions that you think that you're going to get a no to and deal with that rejection. There was this big YouTuber going around for a while. I think it was a YouTuber or a dude that wrote a book. It was him trying for 100 days to get rejected. So he would walk up to a cop on the street and say, "Hey, dude, can I drive your car?" Or he'll go up to like a really attractive girl and she'll be like, "Hey, can I have your number?" Or and he'll be like walking up to somebody and be like, "Hey, dude, can I have that? Do you want to switch phones with me?" It's stuff that people would obviously say no to. And there was two things that came out of this. He built a really strong callus to getting rejected and learning how to work around that objection. And then he had really funny experiences where people actually said yes. So one of the ones that actually said yes was a cop let him drive that car.
That's awesome.
And it's like all video. And somebody took him skydiving because he asked to go skydiving. And if you learn how to talk to people, you learn how to work around rejection and be rejected. Phenomenal base of a salesman. You're going to be head and shoulders above a lot of the competition with you.
Sky's the limit at that point, because getting numb to that rejection and not letting it affect you will then just allow you to make the call every single time and never be like, "Oh, I don't want to make this call. I don't want to do this." It'll just make it so much easier to just do it,
And I can give you the most formative experience for me in sales. And I'll make this story short, promise. So when I first opened up my drive-in movie theater, I bought it. And I did all my digital marketing online. We had a really great reception online of how to like these tickets, but I noticed my ticket sales were going down. So I did some online digital marketing. And I bought 5,000 flyers, 5,000 physical flyers, right? And so I put some of those physical flyers up around the whole city. Like I got into my car, drove around, taped them up. I had about 3,000 flyers left. And I was thinking, who is like, how am I going to get these flyers passed out? So I called my business, like the people that I was business partners with at the time. This was before I left. I called them all. They all said no, except for one. He showed up for about 30 minutes and left. So I have about $2,500 flyers left, right? And I thought, okay, I'm just going to go to every event that I can around town and hand these flyers out in person. And so I printed a shirt that said Drive 815 on the front of it. I got these flyers and I go down to all these events and handed them out in person. And that's the hardest thing to get. Even though you're giving them out for free, you're getting rejected 30 times every minute. You're handing them out. You're asking people, hey, can you take this? Can you take this? And some of them will be hit. Some of them wouldn't. Some of them would be like, I remember just like handing this flyer to like this old dude, right? And he was like, dude, just go away. And I was like, dang. And so I had to take a minute, right? I remember like thinking, wow, am I really inconveniencing people by doing this? And it got to a point I took all my flyers, went back to my car, right? My car was like parked outside this event. I just remember sitting on my front seat looking like, I don't know if I'm cut for this. And I remember thinking to myself, opening night, no cars there. What am I going to do then? I spent the past 5 years at that point building up capital to buy this movie theater to do this. Am I going to let my feelings hurt stop me from handing out these flyers? I decided, no, it's not. I went out and handed all the rest of the flyers. And that was mentally the hardest day that I think I've ran across in a while. Getting rejected. Because to hand out 2,500 flyers, right, you got to probably get rejected 7,500 times. If you really like do the numbers game, like that's
maybe more, like
maybe more,
maybe 10,000, like
yeah, to hand out that many flyers. And now, if you ask me, am I afraid of calling somebody? Hell no. Like it was
there's levels to it. You're handing out flyers to random people on the street, at places, at events, in person, getting rejected 80-90% of the time. What's a phone call at that point?
Yeah, most of the time I got kicked out by security because I didn't have clearance to be there handing it out. So it was. I'm no longer afraid of doing on-phone sales. I'll gladly do that. So
it's hard work and determination is all it is. Jalen, one more thing. What's your favorite book? What's the most influential book you've ever read? And what was the biggest lesson you got out of it?
Think and Grow Rich, most influential book I've ever read. The most important piece of information that I have taken from that book is the chapter about faith. And it is not only about faith in the ability for the world to... Okay, let me figure out how to phrase this. If you say something enough to yourself, you're going to start to believe it. Once you start to believe it, you're going to start acting on it. Once you start acting on it, then you're going to start getting results from it. That's the basis of how all ideas are formed. If I believe I'm bad at math, I'm probably not going to study it too long, and I'm not going to get a good grade on testing. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Every day we create self-fulfilling prophecies. If you have faith that you can change those self-fulfilling prophecies, you're going to start receiving a positive impact. If you don't think well, you're not going to do well. If you think well, you're going to do well. And the whole chapter on faith about how people believe these things, that was the most impactful thing that I've drawn from that book.
Jalen, it was an honor. It was a pleasure having you on the podcast. I appreciate it very, very much. We literally could have talked for 5 hours. I have no doubts. I wish you the best of luck with everything going forward. And I thank you once again for coming on the podcast, man. Hope listeners enjoyed it. And we'll talk to you soon.